Hi folks, I am Alan Watt and this is Cutting Through the Matrix. I often go on about reality and people think, what on earth is he talking about? We all know what reality is, we all live in it. And what we're really referring to is the indoctrinations we get every day that we take out for granted as being actually real news. And we believe we're kept up to date in a very open kind of society. Often people will point to all the hundreds of radio stations, especially in the US, and television stations with their newscasters. It seems impossible that they could all be coordinated into deceiving them for any particular reason. But they don't realize that all these newscasters get their sources from two main news sources, the AP and the Reuters. And that's where really all data comes from in this day and age, apart from your local news as to what your council is doing. But if you even look into your local newspapers, you'll find organizations to do with greening, etc. And you don't realize that all of those organizations are not your local spontaneous grassroots movements that are advising your council. They all belong to the United Nations. These kind of things are never mentioned by the mainstream. They want to keep you in the dark. And reality is really a form of obedience. It's a system in which we live. We're born into it. Your parents were born into it. They believed it. They didn't question it. They'd complain about parties and what they were doing in politics, but they didn't ever catch on to the fact that there's a bigger program underway and what was really behind it. It seemed absurd even to go beyond the usual party politics to find out that there's something else guiding this world. In academia, of course, it's entirely different. That's why they don't talk so much about party politics. They talk about terms like Darwinism, technocracy, stuff like this. Ideas that came out from the time of Darwin, where science was risen to take over from existing religions and even existing political organizations, where they believe in the 1800s that scientists had the right, through pure rationalism, to run the world and guide the world as to where they thought it should actually go. So it depends where you are in life and what you're involved in life as to what your idea of reality happens to be. If you go by the newspapers, forget it. That's your left-right paradigm. And if you notice today too, especially in the last, I'd say 5 years, we've found that advisory boards are on everybody's governments today, unelected advisory boards made up of supposed academia and scientific specialists. This is the rise of technocracy that's supposed to take us over and bring us into a planned society where our whole way of life is to be altered completely. Remember, the Club of Rome were given the job. The members of the Club of Rome were given the job, the task of finding a way to unite humanity, to unite them under a common cause, maybe a war-type scenario, so that we'd give up our rights, go along with all the new ideas they'd give to us, but ultimately to bring in a controlled, ordered, planned society. That means family planning for everyone across the entire planet in a post-nationalistic world. An interdependent society with a global order. And that's, again, what the United Nations is ultimately supposed to rise up to the occasion, to be the boss of all of this, corrupt as they are, mind you. But we never get beyond that, that so much has been really planned for us, and our education goes towards this creation of a reality to foster obedience to a system. That's really what your education is all about. And it is very true that you're told very little about reality while you're in school. You're told all you need to know by your masters. And they certainly discourage thinking outside of the box in academia. You parrot what your professor says and you get good marks and you come through. That means you're given a scroll at the end, your head is squared, and that means that you're given a quality approval stamp to join their system and work for them, your masters in this world. But you'll never really figure it out for yourself. There is a good article here on carbon currency. Now this fits into this topic. Carbon currency. I have told you already that this carbon tax and so on is not just to be put on big business and big corporations. It's to come down to you. How much you will cost society from birth to death. And you're going to pay for it, you see. You will get personal tax, carbon tax invoices or bills coming from the governments across the world. That is part of it. And this goes back again into technocracy. This article here is called Carbon Currency, A New Beginning for Technocracy by Patrick Wood, January the 26th, 2010, Canada Free Press. And it says here, critics who think that the US dollar will be replaced by some new global currency are perhaps thinking too small. On the world horizon looms a new global currency that could replace all paper currencies and the economic system upon which they're based. The new currency, simply called carbon currency, is designed to support a revolutionary new economic system based on energy, production and consumption instead of price. Our current price-based economic system and its related currencies that have supported capitalism, socialism, fascism and communism is being herded into the slaughterhouse in order to make way for a new carbon-based world. It is plainly evident that the world is laboring under a dying system of price-based economics as evidenced by the rapid decline of paper currencies. The era of fiat or irredeemable paper currency was introduced in 1971 when President Richard Nixon decoupled the US dollar from gold. Actually, it was already in fractional reserve long before that. Because of the dollar turned fiat was the world's primary reserve asset, because the dollar was its primary asset. All other currencies eventually followed suit, leaving us today with a global sea of paper that is increasingly undesired, unstable and unusable. The deadly economic state of today's world is a direct reflection of the sum of its sick and dying currencies, but this could soon change. Forces are already at work to position a new carbon currency as the ultimate solution for global calls for poverty reduction, population control, environmental control, global warming, energy allocation and blanket distribution of economic wealth. That's the real reasons for this con game of environmental control, global warming and so on. This is the real reasons behind it. That's what they dreamt up at the Club of Rome, remember. And it says here, unfortunately for individual people living in this new system, it will also require an authoritarian and centralized government or control over all aspects of life from cradle to grave. What is carbon currency and how does it work? In a nutshell, carbon currency will be based on the regular allocation of available energy to the people of the world. If not used within a period of time, the currency will expire like monthly minutes on your cell phone plan, so that the same people can receive a new allocation based on new energy production quotas for the next period. Now, I've mentioned before Bertrand Russell, who wrote in the 40s about this very system, when he said that eventually the government will dish out credits to the public. And of course now we know it will be carbon credits. But he said the same thing. Everyone on the bottom level will start off with the same amounts. You can't save it up. It starts at the same amount every Monday. And that's all to do with control. This is not a new idea. It's an ongoing movement by a very well organized group that's been here for an awful long time. It says because the energy supply chain is already dominated by the global elite, setting energy production quotas will limit the amount of carbon currency in circulation at any one time. It will also naturally limit manufacturing, food production and people movement. Local currencies could remain in play for a time, but they would eventually wither and be fully replaced by the carbon currency, much the same way that the euro displaced individual European currencies over a period of time. Sounds very modern in concept, doesn't it? In fact, these ideas date back to the 1930s. It's actually much older, when hundreds of thousands of US citizens were embracing a new political ideology called technocracy and the promise it held for a better life. Actually, I've got writings from the organizations in the 1800s talking about it for the minutes of their meetings. Even now, classic literature was heavily influenced by technocracy. George Orwell's 1984, H.G. Wells' The Shape of Things to Come, and Huxley's Scientific Dictatorship in Brave New World. This paper investigates the rebirth of technocracy and its potential to recast the New World Order into something truly new and also totally unexpected by the vast majority of modern critics. Then he goes into the background